You have 3 seconds to leave my land." Claire Bennett's voice carried through the snow before Ethan Blackwood could speak her name. 5 years had passed since she vanished from Silver Creek without a note, a farewell, or even a final glance, yet he knew her instantly. The woman standing beneath the cottage lantern was no longer the quiet Omega who once lowered her eyes whenever the council addressed her. Her chestnut hair was tied back in a loose braid, her pale face calm beneath the falling snow, and a wooden bow rested steadily in her gloved hands. The arrow pointed at the ground near his boots, but the warning in her gray-blue eyes was unmistakable. Ethan stood motionless 10 yards from the porch, his black coat silvered with frost. Behind him, the forest disappeared into a white curtain, swallowing the narrow trail that had led him farther beyond the northern border than any royal map recorded. He had followed the tracks of a missing guard through nearly 6 miles of storm, expecting an abandoned shelter or a hunter's camp. He had not expected warm light glowing through glass windows. He had not expected smoke curling from a stone chimney, and he had never allowed himself to expect her. Then he saw the herbs hanging beneath the porch roof: cedar, winter mint, and moonroot, braided together with blue thread. Claire had once tied the same bundle above his chamber door after weeks of sleepless nights. She had claimed it would quiet a restless wolf. He had pretended not to believe her. He had slept peacefully for the first time in months. "Claire," he said. Her name left him like a breath held for 5 years. Her fingers tightened around the bow. "That is not permission to come closer." Ethan's wolf stirred at the sound of her voice, not with dominance, but recognition so deep it hurt. Her scent reached him beneath the pine and snow, wild honey, dried lavender, and the faint warmth of a hearth. It was stronger than he remembered, no longer hidden beneath fear or obedience. "One of my men is missing," he said carefully. "His trail led here. He is alive." Relief moved through Ethan, but Claire's expression did not soften. He collapsed near the eastern ridge. "I treated him before the storm worsened." "Then let me see him." "Your title does not open my door." The words landed quietly, yet they carried more power than any challenge shouted inside a royal hall. Ethan looked past her at the cottage she had built with her own hands. Stacked firewood lined one wall. Snowshoes rested beside the steps. Small carved animals decorated the windowsill. Every detail spoke of a life that had grown without him. He had imagined finding Claire frightened, lost, perhaps waiting to be brought home. Instead, she had created a home in a place his kingdom had forgotten. "I did not come to command you," he said. Something flickered across her face, gone before he could name it. That would be a first. The cottage door opened behind her, spilling golden light across the porch. A small boy with sandy hair stepped into view, wrapped in a quilt far too large for him. He rubbed one sleepy eye, then reached for Claire's hand. "Mama Claire," he whispered, looking past her toward the stranger in the snow. "Is that the king who made you leave?" Claire's hand closed gently around the boy's shoulder. Inside Noah, the child studied Ethan with solemn brown eyes, then disappeared into the warm glow of the cottage. Claire waited until the door shut before lowering her bow. "Children repeat what they hear," she said. "They also notice what adults try to hide." Ethan searched her face for an explanation, but the snow between them seemed to widen into 5 silent years. He remembered another winter, another doorway, and the night he had chosen caution when she had needed courage. Back then, Claire had been 24, a quiet healer in Silver Creek pack whose gentle hands could calm frightened animals and ease fevers no court physician understood. Ethan had not yet worn the crown. He had been the heir to a divided kingdom, watched by councilmen who measured every breath he took. Their bond had appeared slowly, almost secretly, a warmth when she entered a room, a restless pull when she walked away. Neither of them had spoken its name, but both had known. Then a royal soldier collapsed after drinking a tonic prepared in Claire's workroom. By sunset, Victor Hale had produced a missing bottle, a forged inventory, and 3 witnesses who claimed they had seen Claire near the restricted medicine cabinet. The accusations spread through the pack hall before she was allowed to speak. Claire stood alone beneath the carved silver wolves, her pale hands clasped before her as whispers gathered around her like cold rain. Ethan watched from the council platform. He knew she would never harm anyone. He also knew 3 border packs were threatening rebellion, and Victor had warned that defending an Omega accused of betraying the crown would make Ethan appear weak. Say something, Claire whispered when the elders finished. She did not look at them. She looked only at him. Ethan wanted to cross the hall, take her hand, and tell every wolf present that her word mattered more than their suspicion. Instead, he heard his father's old advisors in his mind, warning him that a future king could not place one heart above a kingdom. So he dismissed the council and found Claire alone near the eastern gate after dark. Snow had begun to fall, dusting her chestnut hair with white. "Leave before dawn," he told her. "I can arrange a horse and enough money to reach the southern settlements." Her face changed so slightly that another man might have missed it. Ethan did not. Hope disappeared from her eyes. "You believe them?" "No, then tell them." He glanced toward the guard tower, where Victor's men were watching. "I cannot protect you here." Claire held his gaze for a long moment. "That is not what I asked." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Claire, please understand. If you stay, the council will demand a trial. Until I have proof, I cannot stop them without risking the throne." "Then keep your throne." Her voice did not rise. That made the words hurt more. She removed the small silver badge marking her place in Silver Creek and placed it in his palm. "I never needed you to save me, Ethan. I needed you to believe me where everyone could hear it." Before sunrise, she was gone. No note waited in her room. No footprints remained beyond the frozen creek. Only after the search began did Ethan find the false confession hidden beneath her floorboards, written in handwriting that was almost hers, but not quite. By then, Claire had vanished beyond every road his riders could follow, and Victor Hale had already begun telling the kingdom that the guilty always ran. The memory released Ethan only when the cottage door opened again and Claire stepped aside. "Your guard is awake," she said. "You may see him, but you will follow my rules." Ethan crossed the porch without answering. The warmth inside struck him first, carrying the scent of cedar smoke, bread, and dried lavender. The room was small but carefully built, with smooth pine walls, hand-woven blankets, and shelves crowded with jars of herbs. His missing guard rested near the fire, pale but alert, with a cup of tea in both hands. Caleb Foster sat beside him, having arrived only minutes earlier after following Ethan's trail through the storm. "He was found less than a mile from the eastern ridge," Claire explained. "Exhaustion and cold. Nothing more." Ethan thanked her, but she had already turned away. Noah hurried to place another log on the fire. Beyond the kitchen, two younger children sat at a wooden table, quietly shaping dough under the guidance of an elderly woman. Ethan recognized Grace Miller, the healer who had disappeared from Silver Creek several months after Claire. Grace met his gaze without bowing. "Your Majesty," she said, her tone polite but distant. Ethan looked around again. What he had believed was a lonely cottage was only the visible heart of something larger. Boots of different sizes lined the wall. Extra coats hung from wooden pegs. Through a half-open door, he saw a narrow staircase descending beneath the floor. Voices drifted upward, soft and cautious. "How many people live here?" he asked. Claire placed a blanket around the shoulders of a little girl near the stove. "Enough." "Claire." She faced him then. 23 in winter. "More when the roads are safe." Ethan felt the answer settle heavily inside him. These were not servants or travelers. They were omegas without packs, widows turned away by their families, children who had nowhere else to go. Claire had built more than a home. She had built a refuge. Noah moved close to her side, and she rested one hand on his sandy hair. "I found him near an abandoned mill 4 years ago," she said. The nearby pack had declared him too weak to keep. Noah lifted his chin. "Mama Claire says weak is only a word people use when they are afraid to help." Claire's expression softened. Ethan remembered how Silver Creek had once called her useless because her gifts were quiet. Now those same gifts held an entire community together. Through the windows, he could see lanterns glowing farther down the slope, half hidden among the trees. Small cabins. A greenhouse roof covered in snow. Fences reinforced with carved stones that carried the faint shimmer of moon magic. "You made all of this?" he asked. "Not alone," Claire replied. "No one survives alone forever." The words were not cruel, but Ethan heard the distance beneath them. Outside, Caleb called from beneath the porch. His voice had changed. "Your Majesty, you need to see this." Ethan followed him into the snow. One of the foundation stones had shifted during the storm, revealing a metal plate buried beneath the cottage. Caleb brushed away the dirt. An ancient royal wolf stared back at them, surrounded by symbols Ethan had seen only in sealed records beneath the palace. Claire stepped onto the porch, her face going still. Ethan looked from the mark to the house above it. "This land belonged to the crown," he said. Claire shook her head. "No, the crown took it from someone else." Snow gathered along Ethan's shoulders as he studied the buried crest, but Claire's attention remained on the cottage. "Whatever that mark means, it does not change who lives here now." Ethan looked at her. "I did not come for the land." "Then say why you came." The storm moved through the pines with a low, steady sound. For a moment, he seemed less like a king and more like a man who had carried bad news too far through the cold. "Children in the capital are falling ill," he said. "It begins with fever, then weakness, then a sleep so deep that nothing wakes them. The royal healers have failed." Claire's expression tightened. "How many?" 17. The number changed the air between them. She looked toward the warm windows, where Noah's shadow crossed the curtain. "And you believe the answer is here?" "We found moonroot in the rooms of 3 children who recovered. The bundles were tied with blue thread." Claire went still. Grace had traded medicine with travelers for years, never asking where they carried it. Claire understood at once. Her remedies had reached the capital without her name attached. "I will examine your guard and prepare samples," she said. "That does not mean I am returning with you." "I know. Do you?" Her voice sharpened. "Because kings are accustomed to hearing agreement where none was given." Ethan accepted the words without defense. "Then tell me the terms." Claire studied him carefully. 5 years earlier, he would have announced a plan before asking what she needed. Now he stood in her snow, waiting. "No soldiers beyond the outer stones," she said. "No royal banners. No orders given inside my home. You will not question the people who live here, and you will not call me your mate." The last condition struck deeper than the others, but Ethan only nodded. "Agreed. You will sleep in the storage room." Caleb coughed behind him, quickly hiding what might have been surprise. Claire continued. "You will carry water, split wood, and follow Grace's instructions while I work. Here, everyone contributes." Ethan glanced at the stacked logs beside the porch. "I can manage that." An hour later, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories stood behind the cottage with an axe in his hands and snow melting into his hair. His first swing landed badly. Noah watched from the doorway with open disappointment. Mama Claire hits the center. Ethan adjusted his grip. Mama Claire has had more practice. She built the porch too. I noticed. Inside, Claire measured dried herbs while pretending not to listen. The sound of the axe became steadier. Water buckets appeared beside the stove. Ethan repaired a loose shutter without being asked. He moved through the small tasks with none of the pride she remembered, and that unsettled her more than arrogance would have. Near midnight, Claire reached for a jar on the highest shelf at the same moment Ethan stepped behind her to steady the ladder. Their hands touched. Warmth rushed through her palm, swift and familiar, traveling up her arm like a heartbeat waking beneath frozen ground. Ethan inhaled sharply. Claire pulled away, but the lantern flames bent toward them, and somewhere deep inside her, the bond she had buried for 5 years answered him. Claire stared at her hand as if it had betrayed her. The warmth faded from her skin, but not from the room. Every lantern flame still leaned toward Ethan, stretching thin and gold in his direction. He stepped back at once. "I am sorry." Claire closed the herb jar with more force than necessary. "Do not apologize for something you still want." Ethan's silver eyes lowered. Wanting the bond and deserving it are not the same. The answer unsettled her. She had prepared herself for commands, excuses, and promises wrapped in royal authority. She had not prepared for restraint. Claire crossed to a narrow cabinet and removed a small wooden box. Inside lay the silver Omega badge she had given him at the eastern gate, broken cleanly through the center. Ethan recognized it before she placed it on the table. "I found it outside this cottage 3 winters ago," she said. "I carried it through 2 states, 3 temporary shelters, and more nights in the woods than I can count. One morning, I realized I was still waiting for it to mean something." Ethan touched neither half. "It always meant something to me. That was never the problem." Claire met his gaze. "You did not banish me, Ethan. You simply made sure I had no reason to stay." The cottage seemed to hold its breath. Beyond the wall, snow brushed softly against the windows. Ethan looked older in the lantern light, not from years, but from the weight of remembering them. "I searched for you," he said. "For 5 years. Claire gave a quiet, humorless laugh. No rider came. No message reached me. Not even after Grace registered this settlement with the Northern Trade Posts. I wrote every month during the first year. Then, every season. I sent letters through Silver Creek, the Western Route, and the Royal Couriers. I received nothing. Caleb appeared in the doorway, his expression. Careful. Your Majesty, I can check the dispatch records. Ethan nodded. Do it tonight. Claire turned back to the work table. She ground moonroot with winter mint, refusing to let hope enter where evidence had not. Ethan joined her without speaking, measuring water exactly as Grace had instructed. They worked side by side until the fire burned low. Near dawn, Caleb returned carrying a leather ledger and a bundle of sealed envelopes. These were found in the reserve trunk beneath the courier records, he said. None were delivered. Claire stared at the faded writing on the top envelope. Her name was written in Ethan's hand. Beneath it was the address of the first shelter where she had stayed after leaving Silver Creek. Ethan opened the ledger. Every canceled delivery bore the same authorization mark. A black hawk pressed into red wax. Claire knew it immediately. Victor Hale had used that seal on the accusation that destroyed her name. Caleb's voice dropped. There are 47 letters here. Claire picked up the oldest envelope. The paper trembled between her fingers, though her face remained still. Ethan did not ask her to open it. He only looked at the seal and whispered, "He did not merely drive you away. He made certain I could never bring the truth to you." Claire did not open the letter. Not yet. She placed it beside the broken silver badge and turned toward the loose foundation stone beneath the cottage. The seal below the house appeared 3 winters ago, she said. I thought it was only an old boundary marker. Grace entered carrying a lantern and a ring of iron keys. It was waiting for her, the healer said. Ethan followed them down the narrow stairs beneath the floor. The air grew cooler with every step, carrying the scent of stone, dry earth, and something faintly floral. At the bottom stood a wall Claire had never been able to open. Its surface bore the same ancient wolf carved into the metal plate outside, but here the animal bowed beneath a crescent moon. Claire lifted the lantern. Symbols surrounded the carving in a language older than the kingdom. Ethan recognized only one word. Moonhaven, he whispered. Grace handed Claire the oldest. Your mother gave this to me before she died. She made me promise I would wait until the house revealed its mark. Claire stared at her. You knew? I suspected. Knowing would have placed you in greater danger. Claire slid the key into a narrow opening beneath the crescent. Nothing happened. Then the warmth in her palm returned. The sleeping bond between her and Ethan stirred, but another power rose beneath it, quieter and entirely her own. Silver light traveled from her fingertips into the stone. The wall opened without a sound. Beyond it lay a chamber preserved beneath years of dust. Shelves held journals, maps, and sealed glass bottles. A painted mural covered the far wall, showing women in pale cloaks welcoming children and weary travelers beneath a moonlit arch. None of them bowed to an alpha. None wore chains of rank. Claire stepped closer to the mural. One woman had her chestnut hair and gray-blue eyes. The healers of Moonhaven, Grace said. They created a refuge where rank had no power over compassion. Their magic could calm rage, expose false oaths, and strengthen those taught to believe they were weak. Ethan opened a ledger. The first pages described royal protection. The later entries told a different story. A former king had feared Moonhaven because its people could not be controlled through intimidation. He had erased the settlement from every map and claimed the land for the crown. Claire found a family record tucked inside the back cover. Her mother's name appeared beneath a line of women stretching across generations. Claire Bennett was listed last. Victor knew, Ethan said. He knew what you were before either of us did. Claire's eyes moved across the shelves, taking in the history hidden beneath the home she had built. Victor had not framed her only to separate an Omega from the future king. He had removed the final heir to a power that could challenge the council's authority. A sudden flash filled the stairway. Noah called from above. Mama Claire, the boundary stones are glowing. Claire ran upstairs. Outside, silver flames moved along the protective circle without burning the snow. Figures carrying royal lanterns stood beyond the trees. At their center was a Black Hawk banner. Victor Hale had found Moonhaven. Victor Hale stood beyond the silver boundary with 12 royal guards behind him, his Black Hawk banner snapping in the wind. He wore no winter cloak, as though even the cold had learned not to challenge him. "Your Majesty," he called, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Step away from the traitor. She has deceived you long enough." Ethan moved onto the porch beside Claire. "You will address her by name." Victor's smile thinned. "Claire Bennett is harboring fugitives, occupying crown land, and using forbidden magic to influence the throne." Inside the cottage, Grace guided the children toward the rooms below. Noah hesitated at the doorway until Claire touched his shoulder. "Go with Grace. I will come for you." He looked at Ethan, then back at her. "Do not let him take our home." Claire knelt so they were eye to eye. "No one is taking it." When the door closed, she stepped down into the snow. The silver flames around the boundary brightened with each breath she took. Victor lifted a sealed decree. "By authority of the Royal Council, this settlement is to be dissolved before sunrise." Ethan descended the steps. "The Royal Council does not outrank the king. A king under enchantment cannot speak for the realm." Victor turned toward the guards. "You have all witnessed his condition. He abandoned the palace, crossed into restricted territory, and now defends an accused criminal." Caleb moved to Ethan's side. The accusation against Claire was false. He held up the courier ledger and the bundle of undelivered letters. The evidence was concealed under Victor Hale's seal. A murmur passed through the guards. Victor's expression remained calm, but his hand tightened around the decree. Fabricated documents from a hidden settlement prove nothing. Claire walked to the edge of the boundary. "Then speak the oath." Victor's eyes narrowed. "What oath?" "The truth oath of Moonhaven." The silver flames folded inward, forming a pale circle in the snow between them. "Stand inside it and say you never altered the medicine records, never planted the confession, and never stopped Ethan's letters." Victor did not move. Claire felt the old fear stir inside her, the same fear that had kept her silent in Silver Creek. This time, she did not lower her eyes. 5 years ago, you made an entire pack believe that my quietness was guilt. You mistook restraint for weakness." Victor raised the decree. "Guards, remove her from the property." No one stepped forward. Ethan reached for the silver crown beneath his coat and placed it on the snow at Claire's feet. The clearing fell silent. "A crown that demands her silence is not a crown worth wearing," he said. "Until Moonhaven is heard before every pack, I stand with Claire Bennett." Victor's composure finally cracked. "You would abandon your kingdom for an Omega?" Ethan looked at Claire, not Victor. "I abandoned her once for the kingdom. I will not repeat that failure." The silver boundary surged with light, sweeping across the clearing without heat or harm. Every royal lantern went dark. The guards lowered their banners, and the truth oath circle shone beneath Victor's boots, though he had never chosen to enter it. Words appeared in the snow around him, drawn from the hidden records below the cottage. Altered inventories, intercepted letters, false testimony. Victor stared down as his own seal formed beside every accusation. Claire raised one hand, and the light settled into stillness. "Moonhaven does not punish truth," she said. "It only refuses to hide it." Victor looked toward the guards, but none met his eyes. Then Ethan swayed beside her. The strain of crossing the storm, the sleepless journey, and the awakened bond had finally caught up with him. Claire caught his hand before he fell. Warm silver light moved from her palm into his, and the entire clearing softened into a quiet glow. One by one, the guards sank to their knees, not before the king, but before the woman the kingdom had tried to erase. By sunrise, the clearing had become a place of witness. Representatives from the northern packs arrived beneath plain banners, summoned by Ethan before the storm had fully passed. They gathered outside the silver boundary while Claire stood on the cottage steps with Grace, Noah, Caleb, and the people of Moonhaven behind her. Victor Hale waited under guard near the tree line, no longer carrying the decree that had once made him seem untouchable. The courier ledger rested on a wooden table beside the 47 unopened letters. The altered medicine records lay beneath them, each page marked with the same Black Hawk seal. Ethan stood several feet away from Claire without his crown. He had recovered after resting near the fire, but exhaustion still shadowed his face. When the pack leaders demanded an explanation, he did not answer for her. He turned toward Claire and stepped aside. The simple movement silenced the clearing. 5 years earlier, Powerful men had spoken about her as though she were not standing in the room. Now a king gave her the space to speak for herself. Claire placed both hands on the table. They were steady. I was accused of poisoning a royal guard and stealing restricted medicine, she began. I was never given a fair hearing. My work was altered, a false confession was hidden in my room, and witnesses were instructed to repeat a story that had already been written for them. She opened the old Moonhaven ledger and showed the names of the healers erased from royal history. Victor Hale did not remove me because I was dangerous. He removed me because he feared what this place represented. Moonhaven offered protection without rank, healing without obedience, and truth without permission. No one interrupted her. Victor tried to call the records ancient fiction, but Caleb read every canceled delivery order aloud. Each one carried Victor's authorization. Grace presented the original medicine inventory she had preserved after Claire disappeared. The truth did not arrive like thunder. It settled quietly, page by page, until denial had nowhere left to stand. Ethan then lifted the crown from the snow and walked toward Claire. Instead of placing it on his head, he lowered himself to one knee before her. A murmur moved through the gathered packs. Claire's breath caught, but she did not step back. I failed you when my voice carried more weight than yours, Ethan said. I cannot return the years you lost, and I will not use regret to demand forgiveness. Before every pack represented here, I recognize Moonhaven as sovereign ground under Claire Bennett's protection. He placed the crown on the table between them. I loved you like a king 5 years ago. That was the problem. Let me learn to love you as a man. Claire looked at the people behind her, at the home they had built, and at Noah gripping Grace's hand. I am not returning to the palace, she said. Pain crossed Ethan's face, but he rose without protest. Then I will honor your choice. He ordered Victor removed from royal office and announced that the full council would review every law used to silence omegas and unranked healers. Then he turned toward the forest path. He had taken only 3 steps when Claire felt the unopened letter inside her coat press against her heart. Ethan, she called. He stopped but did not turn until she spoke again. The road will be dangerous after dark. Claire met his silver eyes across the snow. You may stay until morning. 3 months later, spring reached Moonhaven in quiet layers of green. Snow melted from the cottage roof. The creek ran clear again, and new cabins stood along the eastern slope where empty ground had once stretched between the pines. Ethan returned every 7th day without banners, guards, or ceremony. Some mornings he repaired fences. On others, he carried lumber from the lower trail or read supply lists beside Grace, while Noah corrected his arithmetic. No one called him Your Majesty inside the cottage anymore. Claire had not requested that change. It had simply happened. The kingdom changed more slowly. New laws required public evidence before any Omega could be removed from a pack. Healers could register their work independently of royal councils. Moonhaven became protected neutral ground for anyone seeking shelter, and every decree carried Claire's name beside Ethan's, not beneath it. She watched those changes carefully. Promises had once failed her. Patterns mattered more. Ethan never asked when she would forgive him. He never mentioned the bond unless she did. He learned which shelf held the winter herbs, how much honey Noah preferred in his tea, and which floorboard creaked. Outside the children's room, he made mistakes. He listened when corrected. That was what slowly undid her defenses. One evening, under a full moon, Claire found him on the porch sanding a new railing. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and sawdust clung to his dark hair. The crown sat miles away in the capital. Here, he was only Ethan. You missed a spot, she said. He examined the wood. Noah said the same thing. Noah is usually right. He reminds me often. Claire sat beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Fireflies moved through the clearing, and the scent of cedar drifted from the cottage windows. She reached into her coat and removed the broken Omega badge. Ethan set the sandpaper down. I thought you might have thrown it away. I almost did. She placed one half in his palm and kept the other. The silver edges caught the moonlight between them. This does not restore what we had. I understand. It cannot. I know. Claire studied his face. He did not reach for her. He did not fill the silence with promises. He waited. What we had was built when I believed love meant enduring whatever someone chose for me, she said. I do not believe that anymore. Ethan closed his fingers gently around the silver. Neither do I. The bond stirred between them, no longer a chain, no longer a command. It felt like a door left unlocked. Claire stood and opened the cottage entrance. Warm light spread across the porch, touching Ethan's boots. Behind her, Noah laughed at something Grace had said, and supper waited on the table. Ethan remained where he was. "Are you certain?" he asked. Claire looked back at the home she had built, then at the man who had finally learned not to claim what must be freely given. "You may come home now, Ethan." He rose slowly and stepped across the threshold only after she moved aside. The silver badge warmed in both their hands, but Claire understood that the true promise was not in the bond. It was in the choice. He had found the life she created without him, and only when he stopped trying to take her back did she decide to share it with him. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite moment, and what message or lesson did you take away from Claire and Ethan's journey? Share your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation with fellow story lovers. If you enjoyed this tale, please give the video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Alpha's Regret Stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next exciting story filled with romance, drama, betrayal, and unforgettable twists. See you in the next story.